Hello, assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, everyone watching out there. Welcome to Well This Morning with the super amazing and the super inspirational, I want to say today as well, Shahzad Khan. And with him, I am Shaza Hashmi, live from the PTV World Studios in Islamabad to all of you. I hope you all are having a great morning because let me tell you, in the Twin Cities over here, I don't know about the other parts of the country, it was, oh my God, so stunning. So Shahzad, how are you and how was your morning?
Well, thank you very much for being so gracious and giving me enough time that I could actually say my hellos as well. But ladies and gentlemen, since Shiza has said it, so I think I'll move on with that.
Okay.
So it wasn't only in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, it was even raining in Karachi yesterday as well. But I don't know how people in Karachi might be feeling because I've lived in Karachi for 5 years, and as soon as it rains in Karachi, it becomes a swimming pool for the next 10 days. So it's not a very good experience to kind of experience rain in Karachi as well. I mean, there are certain parts of Karachi which are flooded with the rainwater as well, but then there are other parts within Karachi where everything's just normal as well. But coming down to Islamabad and Rawalpindi, it was getting way hotter, and you know, it was beyond. I mean, I do not actually have the right words to comprehend the kind of feeling I used to get, you know, when I was walking outside from my car to going to a place or to a bank.
Exactly.
And it would just feel so hard over here or this part of my head and neck. And I'd be like, man, what's happening with us, you know? And I actually came down to a point where I was thinking that if I can, or if I could, you know, I would actually take days off, you know, during the summer, just like summer vacations and school days as well, and just be at home, be in my room and don't do anything.
Well,
even it came down to an extent that, you know, I finally realized that, you know, I wasn't sitting down enough with my parents as well. And, you know, since I live alone with my parents, so I was feeling that, you know what, I should actually go down, sit down with my father. But with my father and mother, they do not feel the heat. You know, so even if they're sweating, they're like, you know, we're just enjoying it.
Right.
And it was so difficult for me to kind of sit down with them, so I would always run back to my room where the AC was turned on, and I was like, okay, I'm not going out from here. But just yesterday, because it was raining and everything was a little more cooler, so I sat down with them for 3-4 hours, had my conversation, and I feel great today. That's pretty much about it.
Well, that is great, and I think that is the thing about parents, right? They do make you eventually, I think when you know that you have a support system to go back to, they do make you feel good about anything. Also, I don't know, Shahzad, and I totally do agree with you, but parents do have a thing with AC. I don't know why. They will be hot. Just the other day, my mom's calling me and she's like, oh, it's 47 degrees over here, Multan, right? It's insane, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, it's 47 degrees over here and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, Mama, AC laga. Like, you know what? Just make your life easier. Please AC laga. She goes like, oh, no, I can't exist in that. You know, I have my legs itch. And, well, she had her reasons. And I totally, well, gave her room for her reasons. But it's just that I think it's a generational thing.
Exactly. I think, you know, so my father does not have this problem. I mean,
really?
He will turn on his AC, but he'll keep the temperature at 26 degrees. Because he wants to save the energy and the bill for himself as well. You know, obviously he wants to keep his pockets deep. But not just that. With mom, you know, it's very different. She's never going to turn on the air conditioner no matter what happens. Even if he faints, she's not going to turn on the air conditioner.
Why though?
Because she doesn't want it. I mean, at times, even I get this feeling that, okay, you know, you get these muscle spasms if you stay for longer periods in a room which is way much colder than it is actually supposed to be. And for everybody who's out there, whether you turn on your AC or not, the weather in Islamabad, Rawalpindi is superb great. And if you're planning to go out with your family, I think today is the perfect day. But for all of those people who've got their vaccine shots, please make sure that you go out. And for all of those people who haven't gotten their vaccine shots, don't go out because the fourth wave is just around the corner.
We really hope it's not, but yes, it is, because everyone is speculating as well. And I feel like we as a nation, we love to come out of, you know, bad situations together.
You're a resilient nation. Yeah.
We definitely are.
Does that ring a bell?
It does. So, right. Anyway, coming back to where we said that, you know, it's a generational thing with ACs as well. And that is just one of the examples, Shahzad. I think where you grow up, the environment and the time and the people, they do dictate what kind of a person you are going to become, right? True. And while I think our parents did not have to see firsthand, I want to say, extensive climate change right in front of their eyes, we had to. It was never 47 degrees back then.
I mean, it must be, man. I mean, it must be, because I've seen a lot of, you know, old elderly people, you know, wearing dhotis and, you know, lying down on a
but that's their lifestyle now.
You know, whenever you would go to your village, you know, that's how they're sleeping. So that means that it was hot. Because, you know, the lesser the layers of your clothing, yeah, that means that it's getting hotter outside.
Well, yeah, again, maybe that can be a tradition. But where I was going is, while things can be different for different generations, different people, whatnot, but do you feel like for all the people, especially the, well, expats, let's talk about them, for the ones who choose to go and settle outside of Pakistan, no matter what generation they belong to, Shahzad, they cannot leave their roots behind. I mean, the nationalism or the spirit they have for Pakistan, we have spoken about this so many times, it is probably on another level.
True.
I think having the privilege of having a free country and being a Pakistani living in Pakistan, we sometimes may take things for granted as well, right? About freedom of our performing our religion, freedom of our culture, freedom of, well, expression and so many other things.
True.
But for the people who do live abroad, they value Pakistan more than anyone else. And, well, luckily, this story is very inspiring for a lot of people out there, I think, in this time too.
Yeah.
And a lot of women, it's going to be too. Today, we have been joined by one of those expats who is, again, bringing a good news to Pakistan.
And before we kind of introduce her, ladies and gentlemen, we are actually following the footsteps of our premier, Mr. Imran Khan, as well, where he actually had this vision that, what we should really do is that we should focus on expats and bring them over here so that they can promote the soft image of Pakistan. Even though that I do not like this term quite a lot because it's been coined quite a lot of times as well. But yes, at the same time, promoting this soft image is something which is really important. And,
definitely.
What more can we ask for if we have people who have roots over here in Pakistan, and if they were elected for the very first time, and that too within the United States, ladies and gentlemen, and that too makes them the youngest ever to be elected. Ladies and gentlemen, she is Miss Bushra Amiwala as well. Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, how are you?
Walaikum assalam, I'm doing great. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's our pleasure as well. And first things first, because it was so hard for us to remember, we would want you to kind of let all our viewers know out there in 46 different countries, what were you elected for, and what office are you taking up these days?
Absolutely. I serve on the Board of Education of Skokie School District 73.5 and carry the title of being the youngest Muslim elected official in the United States.
Congratulations on that, mashallah. How must that feel?
It's an incredible honor and honestly a privilege, and I didn't even know that that's what would come from running for public office in the first place. I was 19 years old when I first ran, and alhamdulillah, when I got elected in April 2019, I went down in the Chicago History Museum with that title.
Wow.
That is crazy, insane, mashallah. So let's dig deeper into it. Did you always want to be a part of the education scene probably, or did you just always want to be on the political scene of it? How did this come into being?
Absolutely.
You in this role?
Absolutely. I was actually always very interested in philanthropic work, service work, community activism, things of that sort, and politics never really interested me as much. I felt as though it's hard to imagine yourself in a space where there isn't someone who already looks like you represented there, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I didn't see myself envisioned in that environment. But as I grew older, I found that the best way to make long-term tangible change is through public policy, which is why I decided to run for public office.
Wow, that's wonderful. And since we're talking about it as well, so you really do not get a lot of options, just like in Pakistan. You have a lot of political parties and you can pick and choose and then ask them to give you a ticket. Over there, you just got to choose from two. Either you're going to be a Democrat or either you're going to be a Republican as well. So why did you, in the first place, choose to be a Democrat?
Is there another option? Yes, go on.
No, that's actually a wonderful question. What's something that I think people find really compelling and fascinating about my story is that I worked for a Republican senator, the most powerful Republican in the state of Illinois, prior to running as a Democrat. So I have the experience of both sides of the aisle, and because of that, both Democrats and Republicans came out to vote for me.
Wow.
And that is amazing, and I feel like that must have for sure given you a clearer perspective of where you want to go, right? Having the kind of exposure. So you said a lot of people came out to support you and vote for you. Let us know about, was there a journey of building public relations with the people over there? Was it just, were you lobbying just for probably the
Pakistani and Desi community? I want to be a representative of all communities, and that's what my motto was.
Wow, that's wonderful. But I'm going to take you back where I actually asked, which party were you representing as well? Because over here in Pakistan, a lot of people have changed their parties quite a lot of times, or their political affiliations, and there's a lashback to that as well. So, for somebody who's actually served one of the most powerful senators, and that too from the other party, and then eventually running from the Democrat platform, do you think that there was a lashback over there while you were running for the office as well?
There surprisingly was not any pushback because people saw that there was this fresh perspective. And the fact that I was a youth, I was able to work across the aisle. And for me, I was building bridges between communities.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's what the sort of root core tenet of that was.
Wow.
What do you think, while I do want you to let us know what do you think are the main qualities that you need to keep this going, of course, as a leader. Also let me know, while you are in this position, first of all, how long is this position for? And then, do you feel like now you have an added responsibility? I feel like I'm making this a directional question, but now you have an added responsibility to portray, like you said, Muslims and Pakistanis while being fair to others.
Or in fact, all the communities.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, that's a safer answer.
Those are three fantastic questions. I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
I believe that leadership entails empathy. Empathy is one of the most important
For sure.
quality traits for leadership. It's understanding other people's emotions and their beliefs and their values and really feeling for the people around you. And that's sort of what helps make a difference in the lives of others. The second question is, it's a 4-year term, so I was elected in April 2019 and will serve until April 2023.
Wow.
And then
Inshallah.
inshallah, can run for anything else if I choose to, or the same position, a higher office, a different one, whatever I so decide. And
You should be a congresswoman soon.
inshallah, yeah, you have to be 25 years
Yeah, I
old to
know.
do that. So once I'm older, I definitely have my sights on that as well.
Inshallah.
Wow, that's wonderful. Which is why, you know, I'm actually going to get into a kind of conversation which I believe will be a little bit of harder, you know, from what we were actually asking before. And this is something which I always wanted to ask because, you know, we once actually had a lady from Birmingham all the way as well, and, you know, she was a counselor there. And all of a sudden, you know, when obviously people from Pakistan, or if their roots were from Pakistan, and they were elected for a role, I mean, it's great, and we totally value that as well. But why, you know, once you were elected, why did you want to come down to Pakistan and then let people know that, hey, you know what, I've done this?
So when I was running for public office, because I wear a hijab, people saw me as the Muslim woman, and that is all they saw me as. They saw me as the Muslim woman, the girl who wears the headscarf, the girl who, and they didn't know what my name was.
Oh.
Okay.
And when people met me, they would say, "Oh, are you Indian?" And I would say, "No, I'm Pakistani." And a lot of people didn't know what that was.
Okay.
So my roots are something that I hold a lot of value to. And if it wasn't for my parents and their journey and their upbringing and the values they instilled in us, I don't think I would be where I am today. So for me, I have to pay it back and pay it forward.
Which makes me think about your interactions with the Pakistani diaspora as well, and what are you doing on those terms?
Yeah, so upon my trip to Pakistan and Islamabad in particular, I have had the opportunity and pleasure and privilege to meet a lot of different members of parliament, many people who are from some of the youngest members of the cabinet to some of the senior executives, and we've had great, very productive conversations about building the brand of Pakistan
Right.
and shipping it in a way and packaging it in a way where it's seen internationally in a positive
And
light.
you know, just building up on that as well, so, you know, obviously people are full of surprises. You know, you come across a lot of people and then they ask you things which you weren't really expecting. So, you know, what were the most common questions being asked by parliamentarians over here in Pakistan? Have you met them already, or you're supposed to meet them?
I've met some of them already,
Right.
and then I have a full day of meetings today.
Okay.
So what are the most common questions people have asked you?
Or concerns.
Some of the most common questions people ask is what the COVID situation is in the United States, and 80% of the population in the U.S. is vaccinated, so a lot of places are maskless now. You don't have to worry about things of that sort.
Wow.
It's as if COVID never existed. It's
Wonderful.
quite back to normal.
And they were hit the most. I mean, hardest, one of the hardest.
Yeah, of course. So it's really inspiring to see how quick they were able to recover from that, but people have been very curious about that.
Wonderful.
Well, of course, I mean, we would be, since we are almost 2 years into this pandemic, we are looking forward to greater things. But towards the end, Ms. Bushra, I don't know why I ask these technical questions. Maybe I shouldn't be for a morning show, but here's
Go
the
ahead,
thing.
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so it makes me think, because you are on the education board, you do have a say in incorporating or probably making suggestions to the syllabi that the students are going to study and everything. Considering that they're coming from so many different backgrounds and, well, households, are there some things in your mind that you want to make the American children, I mean, they should grow up studying this?
So actually, alhamdulillah, I've actually been able to make one of these changes,
Wow.
which I can tell you all a bit about.
Sure.
So,
Please.
and this is, so since I was raised in this education system, I found that the only thing that was taught about Muslims in the curriculum was 9/11. And that is it.
Is it taught?
Really?
Okay, I didn't know it's even taught.
And then what did you change about it?
So I believe that that's still something, it's a part of history. feel free to teach that,
For
educate
sure.
that. But I wanted to highlight the positive contributions of Muslim Americans in history and society, in
Brilliant.
art, science, technology, mathematics, so many contributions, right? The founder
Brilliant.
of coffee was Muslim and the founder of algebra was Muslim. Why don't we know these things?
Chemistry for that matter.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
And so I testified in front of the entire parliament in the state of Illinois. They gave me 2 minutes to present my case, and it passed. So now in every school in the state of Illinois, it is mandatory to teach the positive contributions
Wow.
of Muslim Americans in history.
Yeah, wow, wonderful.
I mean, this is amazing,
I mean,
for
you
sure.
you truly deserve a standing ovation for that reason as well. But since we are all wired up, so
We can't move.
Yeah, we're going to clap for that as well. But very
Yeah.
quickly, one last question. That is, since we are talking about education, and that's what you're doing over there as well, and you know, in days to come, obviously in future, we would probably want somebody like you to kind of look into the education system over here in Pakistan, because we've just
sure.
recently launched the unified curriculum as well. So, you know, what will be your take, you know, when we talk about Pakistan's education system, and what changes do you think, what minor changes can bring about a very major change?
And also, this is your closing notes, so maybe you know, you can add a closing line to it. Go
Okay,
ahead.
absolutely. I think some of the things that I find from the system of education in the States is that public education is free for everyone.
Yeah.
So financial barriers should not be a barrier to education. I think there should be equal and equitable access to everyone when it comes to education. And with that, it has been truly an honor to be on your show and to talk
Wonderful.
to you all. I will do a quick plug that I have a book coming out, inshallah, as well, in August of 2021. And
What
feel
is it
free to-
called?
It is called Courage.
Oh,
Correct.
wow.
Yes.
I'd love to read it, inshallah. Best of luck
Inshallah.
for all your future endeavors, Bushra. You are an inspiration, while of course to hundreds of thousands of people out there, but to us as well now, because we have met you in person, and mashallah, you're amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is one thing that really, really touches my heart, is how this incumbent government is actually engaging youth in, well, building something better and making the country prosperous as well, right?
Exactly.
Because I feel like they do realize this is the potential of probably the future, and these are the people who are going to drive the future as well. Do you agree, though? I mean, because this is the only change I've seen in this government. I did not see it before, engaging the actual prospective youth of Pakistan, right?
Absolutely. And I think if we invest in our youth, we're investing in our future.
True.
Absolutely.
And that's absolutely what we want as well. And, you know, whenever you're launching your book, if you get a chance to be back over here in Islamabad, you know, be our guest as well. We would love to talk about your book as well, because it definitely takes a lot of courage, ladies and
Yes.
gentlemen, to be out there and to promote your own culture. And then, you know, speaking of that, I believe that, you know, we kind of need to appreciate that she's upholding her values, morals, and ethics as
course.
well. And this is something which we all need to do. It does not really matter which country you come from. All you need to do is you need to uphold your morals, values, and culture as well. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually going to head out towards a short break. Don't go anywhere, because when you guys will come back, we will actually be in conversation with somebody who's been gathering, you know, a lot of articles from her husband's diary, and they have actually formed a book. And that gentleman was actually known as one of the founders of Pakistan Television. He was the first ever chairman of the Pakistan Television as well. His son and his wife will be joining us in a short while as well. Don't go anywhere, because we really need to know what was he writing about, you know, while he was the chairman of the Pakistan Television, and when he retired as well. So we're going for a short break.
Yes.
Don't go anywhere, because we will be
Right back. Stay tuned. Good morning.
मीठों वाले टुर जाणगे
Truck art from Pakistan is renowned to the world for its attraction and unique sense of artistic taste. Pakistani truck art is Pakistan's cultural identity. One look at a truck with artistic work over it, and the first thing which would come to your mind would be Pakistan.
I've been driving truck for the last 5 years. Not only it's my interest and passion, but also is a source of income for my family and I.
We open up the whole body of a truck and piece it down to various parts to get the painting process smoother. Base frame of the truck gets painted first. Then we move on to the rest of the body where we prepare the whole base structure. Once the foundation is all checked, it is sent to the painter. And then after it gets painted, it's further sent to the decoration department. It takes around 2 months to get the procedure completed.
Trucks in Pakistan are decorated with the slogans and pictures all over their bodies from local folklore that gives them a Pakistani look. These slogans are the fortune cookies of Pakistan. After reading them, you have something to ponder over your own life and sometimes about the life around you.
Welcome back to Well This Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all are having a, first of all, healthy breakfast.
Yeah.
And then a great day as well, inshallah. This is Shahzad Khan, and I am Shaza Hashmi. Well, Shahzad, you actually left us with a very interesting story before we did go out on a short break. What book are we talking about, and what is this compilation we're looking at?
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as I've told you before, that that we're very lucky, in fact, that we've actually been joined by two gems over here in the studios with us, and I'm not flattering at all, and it's just because of the fact that over the period I've learned, one gentleman who's over here, I've learned quite a lot from him, and obviously he's learned quite a lot from that one amazing lady we have over here in the studios as well. I've given you who they are in the first place as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to do the introduction so that we can have the maximum time and we can talk about it, and we can talk about the book, we can talk about the articles. And the last article by Samazar Saab was, ladies and gentlemen, written in 2006, if I am correct, because that's what the book says. But why did it take them so long to kind of, reveal them and bring them out for the world? So let's start the conversation. Without any further ado, we are very lucky that we've actually been joined by Mrs. Nasreen Azhar. Hello, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. You happen to be a human rights activist as well. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Shahzad. I'm fine, thank you. And how are you?
Absolutely
Great,
perfect.
great.
And ma'am, thank you very much for joining us. And you look wonderfully stunning.
Yes,
Thank you very
mashallah.
much. Wonderful. Last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, his introduction really needs to be very special, and it's because of the fact that, that the very moment I started hosting shows, when there was no concept of having bands, there were underground bands over here in Islamabad, and, the music scene was very different. So I used to host shows for free. But this gentleman always had his own voice, and he always had his own concerns. He was very different from what you usually get, in a music band and whatnot, but he had a very Sufi side to him as well. He had a very poetic side to him as well. And he was always very supportive. He was always very positive. And, I used to think that, yaar, ye kaise kar lete? Ladies and gentlemen, he's one of the most amazing, talented people I've ever come across in the Pakistani music industry.
Wow.
And he is Mr. Arif Azhar. Assalamu alaikum, Arif bhai. How are you?
Alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for that flattering introduction.
And thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you, and you truly deserve such kind of introduction as well, because the kind of work you've done for the Pakistanis and people abroad as well. You know, I would love to thank you, you know, for actually dedicating your entire life to kind of giving something to Pakistan as well.
No, thank you so much, but I hope I still have my entire life left in front of me.
Alhamdulillah. I hope the same to you as well.
Sure.
I hope the same to you as well, but very quickly.
But you know, Shahzad, and
Yeah.
I was just, you know, listening to your introduction about how you were always sort of appalled by his presence. I don't think it's a surprise, I mean, thinking where he's coming from, the household of, well, wise and literary people, I want to say as well. So, Ari, before we get to you, I think I want to get to ma'am over here. So, ma'am, today we are celebrating a book that you compiled.
That's right.
And you sort of, I don't want to say you sort of concluded it, but you did give a preface to it as well, because you know what this is about. So, I think it's fairer that you tell us the story.
Well, actually, throughout his life, throughout his married life at least, Aslam, who was my husband, he was writing things off and on. He wrote articles, he had interviews in the papers, and he wrote articles here and there. And then he passed away about 5.5 years ago. Right, frankly, I never thought of it, but our old friend Ahmad Salim, who's a very well-known writer and a man of a literary person, an academic, he phoned me and he said, why don't you collect everything that he's written and we'll print a book of it. So I looked in his computer, and in his documents I found a lot of things he had written off and on. I also had some cuttings of, you know, things he had written. So we put them together, and then Ahmad Salim asked me to write an introduction to it, which I did, and so the book is here, finally.
Nice.
Wow.
So while you were, sorry Shahzad, because this is really interesting for me, did you ever, before you had the idea, before someone gave you this idea, would you ever go through his work and, well, be inspired, because you were living with this person for so long, to have that mind with you and everything?
That's right.
Please
Well,
let us
he
know.
was a great companion and a friend. And any question I had about anything, whether it was literature, philosophy, or life, or even very ordinary common things in life, I would, you know, discuss it with him and talk to him about it, and always got a very good response from him and learned a lot from him. And I think he learned something from me too.
I'm sure.
Mashallah, mashallah.
So sweet.
Ma'am, you know, the title of the book says, Ek Zara Sochne Do. You know, and when we come to think about it is, you know, it feels like as if, I don't know, I mean, it does not really feel like a complete sentence to me as well, you know, Ek Zara Sochne Do. You know, and there's quite a lot to the title itself, you know, so why this title in the first place, and what did you kind of find, you know, when we talk about his work?
Well, Ek Zara Sochne Do is a poem by Faiz Ahmad Faiz, and it was one of Aslam's favorite poems. And he often used to say that we don't think enough, we just talk without thinking, you know. And when I was compiling this book, this came to my mind, this title. Also in one of the articles, he quotes this particular verse. So therefore, I decided on this title.
Exactly. And moving on to Arif Bhai now. So Arif Bhai, you know, okay, I'm sorry that I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm certainly not sure whether to ask this question or not, because I really do not know whether you are or not as well. You know, having to have such amazing parents, you know, who loved each other's company in the first place, why didn't you ever think of getting married? I mean, this is something I wanted to know.
Good question.
Yeah.
Auntie must be waiting for this.
I guess too big
people.
to aspire to something that perfect. No, because you know I was fortunate enough to be born in such a household with not only educated and intellectual parents, but also very loving parents.
Indeed.
And I thought that was normal. And it's only later on when I grew up that I realized that actually it's exceptional.
It's rare.
Actually, yes, most marriages and most relationships are way more turbulent than what I expected, what a normal household
air
looks
pockets.
like. So no, I have been very blessed. All of us has, my elder brother, our younger sister. We've been truly blessed in that way.
But at the risk of deviating from this conversation, but having this sort of brought up, didn't that make you think, okay, well, this is my option, sab kuch acha hoga, or, you know, stuff like that, inshallah. I mean, didn't that make you feel like this is my understanding of what life would be, and it is just so beautiful, so this is how I'm going to lead my life?
Yeah.
I'm
And
just,
move forward.
I don't know if my question is
And look
making
for a
sense.
companion.
But
No, no, of course, it's not that I haven't been looking for companions.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that, you know, life's path, where it leads you. I've been
sure.
traveling around a lot, I suppose. I used to be, you know, we used to live in Karachi, then we shifted to Islamabad, then I lived in Croatia for many years, so I was rooted there for many years.
Wow.
So part of my life is there, and I almost got married there, but then didn't, and then shifted
I like
back.
एक तरह सोचने दो.
yeah, were you a part of it though?
No, I mean, we were, of course, all a unit, a family unit, and we were all involved in each other's thought processes, and still are. We could discuss everything, almost everything, with our parents, and I used to have a lot of talks about everything under the sun with my father. I only started reading a few of these articles recently when the book came out, because I read one article ages ago. Of the rest, I wasn't even aware.
All right.
But of course, I was aware of how my father, of his thinking process, and he was truly a Renaissance man, because you know, he is credited to have been, you know, the founder of PTV, or one of the founding fathers of PTV. And he was one of the founders of the Dastak Theatre Group in Karachi during the Zia eras when we lived there, and he's supposed to be an artist and a director and an intellectual, but basically he considered himself as more of a scientist, and he was truly a social scientist. So in this book, you have his articles from the 80s from the mid 80s till the mid 2000s, and you can see a whole change in his evolution of his thought process, and of the different phases that he was going through, because although he was always very outspoken and always didn't hesitate to speak the truth, but he was never caught up in any one ideology.
Wonderful. So they were
he had
phases.
his romances with ideology, and then he would evolve beyond that. So it's very interesting when you read articles from different periods of his life. And what this book has actually afforded me, it's afforded me a sort of a continuous, because I read the old articles and then I remember him like he used to be back then. And then I read the latest article. And I see now the totality of his thought process in continuum, as he would have said.
And this is something which I even wanted to talk about as well, ma'am. So, you know, because the latest article, you know, from one of his writing is from 2006, and you just very recently mentioned as well that, you know, we lost him 5.5 years ago as well. So from 2006 till 2015, he wasn't writing, or did he give up on writing, or you didn't include those articles because you wanted a second edition to be there?
No, Shazad, I think we didn't find many of them, you know, because he wrote for papers that we couldn't find anymore, and that had been lost because throughout our long life together, we moved from city to city for various reasons. And I think we must have lost quite a bit. So whatever I could find, but I'm sure there's lots that I didn't find. But whatever I could find, we put together.
So can you share anything from the book as well?
Well, first of all, I want to say that my husband, Aslam Azhar, was a man of very diverse interests, you know. He was passionately fond of the arts and very interested in art, culture and civilization, ancient civilizations. At the same time, he was very interested in physics. And at times used to say, I wish I had been a physicist, you know. And he used to consider arts and science as two sides of the same coin. And he felt that both of these things, art and science, are essential for the development of society and for civilization.
And that's true.
And he felt that in Pakistan we have been very neglectful of the arts and also to some great extent of science. So that is something he felt very passionately about, and he's written a lot about it.
Wonderful.
Please, can you share something? We'd love to hear.
Yeah. Well, you know, he wrote a very long piece, an essay called The Arts in Pakistani Society. I just want to quote something he said. He said, science is one of the two great intellectual capabilities that human beings possess. The other is art. While science probes the physical universe, art seeks out the great generalized principles that bestow insights into man's life in nature and in society.
Wow.
Science and art live together, grow together, constantly nourish each other. So this is what he said about
And when did he write that?
So beautiful.
Oh, he wrote that, I think
This
in
is
the
86, I
19,
think.
yeah.
So imagine, you ladies and gentlemen, you know, this is one thing which I would actually pick up from the book as well, and that is that, you know, we actually had such literary and amazing figures back then in 1980s.
That wasn't
But have
so
we
long
progressed?
ago.
But have
It's
we?
just here.
But have we progressed from there onwards? You know, this is something I would love to talk about. You know, we in 2021, you know, where the world's actually talking about artificial intelligence, smart motorways,
That's right.
autopilots, auto-driving cars as well. Where we are here, you know, and we have a tractor in the field. We're an agriculture-based economy, and yet there's no technological intervention within the economics of the country as well. I think that we should actually think about it.
I totally do agree with you, but I feel like that is taking a dark turn at this point as well. So let's save that for another show, because since we're so short in time, I really want to listen to
I
something.
mean, that's why he wrote it, you know.
I
That's why he
totally-
wrote it.
I agree with you
just
100%.
catching up, following up on what you were saying, there's a
Yeah.
quote in one of his later articles where he says exactly this, that he says that in our country, the feudal rulers, helped by their ideological munshis, which are the religious parties,
Yeah.
must understand that knowledge and modernity is the right of every Pakistani.
True.
So he, on the one hand, used to be very, very critical of the feudal setup of Pakistan. And he used to also feel how the original message of all scriptures has been hijacked by the clergy. And then he used to try and understand how culture can play a part in connecting all of this.
Wonderful.
And in connecting us with the modern world. So, anyways.
And this is why, you know, so before we do that as well, we would actually love to thank you for joining us, ma'am. It was wonderful. Even though that we had a short span of time, it was still, you know, an eye-opener for all of us as well, and for everybody who's out there in 46 different countries. Thank you very much for kind of sharing such amazing pieces from his work as well. You know, it's wonderful to actually see that people still kind of want that out there as well. And thank you very much for doing that. Thank you very much, Arif bhai.
Thank
you.
you.
You're a legend in the making. That's what I always say as well. And you, ma'am, already are a legend as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know, you wanted to say something?
I actually want to ask for all those people who are interested in getting this book, how can they get that?
Well, it must be in the bookshops.
Yeah.
It's
Is
been
it available already?
Yes,
Okay.
it's been printed by Sange Meal, the Lahore publisher, and it must be in the bookshop.
Wow, so wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you get your copy, and you're going to get to learn quite a lot
Shall I
as
show
well.
what the book looks
For
like?
sure.
Yes.
Can I do that? This is the one you're looking for in your nearest bookstores. That is Ek Zara Sochne Do
Yeah.
by Aslam Azhar Saab, and of course compiled by Ma'am Nasreen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was, of course, an absolute pleasure, like Shahzad said. And I think the best way for us to wrap it up and go out of this, period of time is definitely your beautiful voice, Mr. Arif Azhar.
Thank you so much. Then I'll sing that Rajasthani for it is an old Rajasthani song with a few additional verses. So Kesariya balama avore padharo mare des padharo mare des kesariya balama avore padharo mare des padharo mare des sajan preet lagaye ke दूर देश मत जाओ बसो हमारी नागरी हम मांगे तुम खाओ केसरिया बालमा आवो रे पधारो मारे देश पधारो मारे